Hello everyone, my name is Damon Rocha and this is my GPE104 midterm update number 3. Let me share my screen real quick and we can get started. So for this update, I want to cover the last few items: the collision of triggers, input action, spawning and destroying actors, functions and custom events, and the user interface. So let's start with, just go through the list of the collision and trigger. The one example of this I have is this enemy class. Let's go hop into the loop real quick and check that out. All right, so this enemy class uses two collision spheres. This outer one to detect the player, and this inner one to detect when the player is at a certain distance and it should stop moving. These two spheres are invisible in the world, and they're just there to check for certain objects overlapping them. So for example, this outer sphere, it runs this on component being overlap, and then if this component overlaps it as the first person character, it's going to set that player, set the player's found, and that it should chase the player. These variables are all used above in the semantic with all these other functions. Then once the player leaves that sphere, it again ensures that the object leaving the this collision sphere is the player. If it is, it sets the player to void and turns found player off. Now for the inner sphere, this is the stop moving sphere, and like its name implies, once the player enters that sphere, it's going to stop chasing them. And that's just I did that because of some issues with it getting too close and then the enemy moving in weird ways because it was really close to the player. So I was like, if it overlaps this, I just want it to stop moving and to shoot at it from there. And once the player leaves that, I actually need to put it that it should chase them again. So once they in that overlap with that sphere, then they should chase the player. And I can show that real quick. So if I get in the first sphere, it chases me. If I get here, it stops chasing me, but it just keeps shooting. Okay, and that is it for collision. We'll go for input action. So for input action, I wanted to cover the ability component I created. So for the ability component, I have it right here. And it is bound, the player controller is bound to this enhanced input system. And as long as that's valid on the player controller, I'm going to add this mapping context for this IMC main ability input mapping I created. And I'll jump into that real quick. So these all exist under the first person because that's just where it already was with this template. So I just figured I'd put it there as well. In this input, we have this mapping that just gives where the inputs, the name of the input action, along with the key that it's bound to. And the actual action itself gives a description of what type of value it is, so whether it's click or not clicked, or like a joystick, like it's this amount in this direction, that amount in that direction. And the triggers for it is pressed. So anytime this is pressed, we're just going to complete an action for each press of the F key is what I have it set for now. I also went through and changed the input mapping of shoot so I could turn the template gun into an automatic. So instead of press, I turned it into hold, and I'll jump into what the code for that looks like in just a second. But let's keep on with the ability component. So it adds this mapping context to the player controller, so that way when someone presses F, that it'll fire that main ability. And then it is watching for this enhanced input action of the ability, and then it's going to get the components, the owner of this ability component, and get all the components on that interface of the BPI usable. And all that is this blueprint interface class that has this usability. And it's just promising that whenever it fires, whatever class has this, whatever class is the owner, has an implementation of this usability. And the implementation I set up for it was under this time portal component. So this implementation of usability casts the component owner, which is set in the begin play, to the first person character. As long as it is the first person character, it's going to get the world location of the first person character and forward vector, which is just like the vector in the direction the character is facing. Now we're going to multiply that by 1500 to get a vector of the magnitude 1500 in the way the character is facing. Then, and this is actually the camera, not the character, sorry. Then we're going to add those two together for an end of this line trace, and we're going to get the player's location, or the camera's location as the start of this line trace. This is just like an invisible line that'll go out until it hits something. And it's actually checking exactly for world static objects, physics bodies objects, and world dynamic. I put these three because for the most part, that seemed like the main object types I'd be using. I'm probably missing some here and there. I haven't found a whole lot of issues with these I put in yet, but I'm willing to say that I'm most likely missing something. So, but it's worked so far. So as long as this actually hits something, we are going to spawn that BP portal, which I'll jump into what that does in a second. And I'm taking the hit struct, breaking it up into its components so I can get this location that it actually hit. And then I wanted it to go exactly on the grid where it hit instead of just like in random space, just make it a little more uniform. So I use this vector, snap the grid, and set the grid size to 100, and then use that as the transform of where this portal actor is at. Now let's hop into the portal actor real quick. Let me close all that. So this portal, and all this actor does is teleport actor on overload. So this is again another trigger component, but instead of the trigger being a trigger sphere that you can't see, it's actually this cylinder. So I set the cylinder to have its collision be just a trigger, meaning that it's not going to block anything and actors can walk through it. And whenever they walk through it, it's going to cast that to the first person character because I didn't want the enemies to be able to teleport. Maybe in the future, but for now, that's did that. And I'm going to get the game mode because the game mode is actually tracking what level the character's on. And based off of that, it's going to set the direction that I'm going to set using this teleport actor. And it's actually a little, probably not the best implementation of this, but I found it to work for the most part, unless you just spam it a lot or at the edges of the map, sometimes it messes up. But I'm getting the first person character because that's the actor that's passed into this, getting the rotation, their location, and then I'm taking this direction, which is 1 or -1, multiplying it by 10,000 because that's the distance between the two levels in the world, and then making a vector of that and adding that only to the x direction, and then I'm adding that new vector to this player's actor location and causing them to teleport, which is a similar like offset, move offset, location offset, but instead it does some of the moving them out of the way if they're about to overlap with something. Instead of us having to handle it, it does that in there. And then as long as it's able to complete that, then it just returns. If it doesn't, then we're going to toggle this level back to the one it was before, because as was shown here, actually it's done at the end. So that's something I actually have to fix because that shouldn't be done there. But anyways, it toggles this back to what it was before, and then and then the next time if you try again, it'll teleport you to the right level. There's a lot of issues with this implementation, but I just built it out so it would work for this time. But I want to say if I back in and change this, maybe use like instead of spawning a teleport portal or whatever, just have some that were connected across the two levels, so the player could just walk into one and they would be in a safe spot in the other level. And that's what I have for the portal component. Let's see what else do I need to cover. So I had collisions, input. We kind of went through spawn. As far as destroying actors, this portal component is one that it only lasts in the world for 2.5 seconds, then it destroys itself. Or another is in these enemy killed. So like if the enemy dies, we're going to destroy this actor. And I left some of these areas of this code so we can go through functions in a little bit. So I'll go through and create a few functions as a part of this in just a second. But this is an example of destroying actors, and then for spawning actors, again, the portal ability. And then another one that was already present in the game that I just modified a little bit was this this pickup. No, not the pickup. It was okay. So I did a fully automatic version of the original gun, and again, it spawns this first-person projectile based off of the camera's location. But my contribution was this delay and shot delay, along with it being the trigger being hold. So it fires over and over again with the shot delay that's set, that designers have ever set in the editor. But right now it's 0.1, and that just makes it so it's an automatic weapon, but it doesn't fire like so fast that there's just a line of projectiles coming out of the gun. And that's it for destroying and spawning actors. So for functions and custom events, a good place for functions I had is this enemy class. So I could argue that I could make more of this with functions, but I felt like it was not too hard to read the way it was. Like if the player's valid, and we found the player, then we're gonna go through the sequence. The sequence gets the player's location, passes in this function that rotates to the player. We went through that last video. Then the next thing is it shoots at the player. So again, just take all this functionality that really you only need it in this class, like a delay of how long between enemy shots and spawning projectile and playing sound. Like that's all related to just shooting at the player. And then moving to the player again, just taking all this functionality of whether it's chase the player's valid, and then adding to the world offset of the enemy player. Those are some functions I have here. I could easily change a few more of these functions, but I felt like they were pretty simple. So I want to go through and set up one set of functions in the skills component. So for here, event on killed or the killed enemy, I think, so this section, we are getting the static mesh cube of the actor from the actor, so that way we have a place to spawn the emitter. I want to say this is all related to spawning the emitter, other than the set alive, but we actually do that. Let's put the set alive before the destroy actor. And put that here. And we'll call this collapse to function. This can be a private function because this is really the only thing that needs to be called out. And we'll call this function spawn death particles. And then this is just playing the sound. We'll leave that how it is for now. But the set alive and destroy actor. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna change that. It's all pretty it's pretty easy to read as it is, so I'll leave that one alone. This portal could definitely, again, I think this one's fine. There's not anything too complex. So okay, I think that's it for components. Last thing I wanted to cover is functions. Let's get custom events real quick. So one custom event that I can look at is actually in game mode, I think. Let's look at the event graph. No, maybe the health component then. Take damage. All right, so and it might just be in the HUD. Okay, so I added this health bar, and the health bar, yeah, uses this update, which says update, but it should say update. Let's change that, update health UI. And this custom event is fired when the first person character health component fires this event on health updated, and whenever this custom event is fired, it just goes in and changes the health percent for the health bar. And I just used that because it was an easier way of changing the health instead of doing it through another class or binding this directly to a function in the player character. I figured, or in the health component on the player character, it'd be easier just to bind it to this health event, and anytime that fires, so whenever you take damage or whatever, then this custom event fires as well. And that's it for custom events. Let's move on to the UI. So we have this HUD UI, menu UI, game over, or game one, and game over. I'm not going to give a whole lot on this because we kind of just covered a good chunk of the health UI in the HUD. The only other thing in the HUD UI is this update lives, which again is just setting lives in this left corner. And then this shards is like the amount, like the goal for the game. So you want to get this to 0, and it is getting that from, I think I might actually be, okay, so it's just getting it directly from the game mode, and then adding that text. So this one actually did bind to the to this value in the game mode. So this get shard count text isn't really called anywhere as far, but anytime there are, it's just going to reflect this value in the game mode. So in the game mode, the goals, it starts out with the amount of time shards in the game. Once it reaches 0, then the game's over, and it's going to get how many of these goals are in the game mode at any time. I realize now, though, I could probably do similar to what I did with the health and have like an event that fires and bind it to there, but I didn't do that for this at least. Now, so the main menu, UI, it's pretty simple. Either quits the game or opens the first person map. Game one, again, just has its 2 buttons. Again, either opens the map or jumps to the main menu, and same thing with the you died. I'll just give a quick playthrough of the end product. I guess before that I can show what my levels look like. So here's the level the player starts in. The various enemies, time shards, and like there's parts of the level that are clearly blocked off from each other. So the player will clear this area, get all the time shards, and be like, okay, I can't do anything else, and they'll teleport. And then they come here, which is like a futuristic city slum. And again, they have to do similar things. So like go around, collect the time shards, kill the enemies, teleport back and forth between the 2 maps to get everywhere. So I'll show it real quick, and then we can be done. I guess I did do some audio assets that I pulled in. So like one is this wind that's playing, and then again, I'm not actually sure if this is playing out loud, but I do have like some wind that is going behind all this. So I think I figured out the sound. I actually wasn't sharing it with the Zoom meeting that I'm using to record this. So I am, for the sounds up, I'm using this SC City and SC Wind and then HUD. And I made all 3 of these sound cues using sounds that I pulled in from freesound.org. So the wind sound cue is using this wind 1, 2, and 3, and it's mixing them all together. The plasma shot is what the enemies, the sound enemies making the shoot, and it's mixing together this plasma shot 1 or 2, or actually randomly. So it's randomly jumping between these 2. And then the city is doing similar to like the wind, and it's just mixing the city 1 and city 2. And I was thinking about trying something with this death sound and party horn death. It's just because it makes that type of sound. But I decided not to use it with the, I guess I had it on enemy death, I had like confetti or something, but it just didn't fit really well. So I'll just show the sounds real quick, and then we can keep going through. And so this is, it's all spatial, so like louder as you get in and whatnot. And And then for the city sound, it's sounds like a city. There you go. I'll work with trailers. Awesome. And yeah, that's it for the sounds. And let's teleport over to the other side. And again, if it's blocking, it's not going to take me. So like, there we go. So now in the city. And one enhancement I wanted to do with the enemies was when they get shot for them to chase you. Ran out of time to do that, but that would be something cool because it'd make them seem a little smarter than they are now. Because now it's just if you get in the sphere, and then as soon as you get out of it, they stop chasing you. But yeah, that's what I have so far. I don't know that I'll be able to finish this level. I haven't beat it yet. I usually die before I get to the end. But let's see if I can get through it. So we got what, 4 left? I might actually get this time. 3, 2, and there's only a couple left over there. So when I go back, so close. Let's try over here. So I need probably teleport on this side. Let's try this. No, blocking. But it'd also be nice to have some type of indicator of like whether or not they're being blocked. And shouldn't have been able to spawn here, but it let me for some reason. Okay, so back here. And let's try spawning from this location. There we go. Oh, I died. Okay. Well, I got to the closest I've gotten. And that's it for me. Thank you. Yeah. See you guys later.